There we go. Well, thank you. And Mona, one other thing I was going to say about Mona is I appreciate that she sees that this battle is bigger than any one person. And I appreciate that. And it's my privilege to introduce Chuck Baldwin, and Chuck understands that too. And I think that's a key point, and I appreciate that about individuals in the freedom battle that understand that this thing is way bigger than one person. And first off, I want to say that Chuck Baldwin is from Pensacola, Florida, and he's here with his lovely wife, Connie. And I don't know if, Connie, would you stand up? I don't know if they can put a light on you, but this is Connie Baldwin. Chuck's a husband and a father and a grandfather. I thought it was interesting that Chuck is a member of the first graduating class of Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. Went to Pensacola, Florida as a young man and founded Crossroads Baptist Church in Pensacola and has pastored there for 35 years. That says a lot about a man's leadership, to be pastoring a flock for 35 years. Chuck is a nationally syndicated columnist. I'm sure many of you read his columns. He's headlined on newswithviews.com. Writes extensively along with his son Tim now, who is writing extensively, and Tim is focusing on states' rights. And I just met Mr. Van Wagner there, from Utah, whom I didn't know, who's with the National States' Rights Coalition. Did I say that right? And so I think Mr. Van Wagner is going to appreciate Chuck's comments, because one of Chuck's burns is restoring state sovereignty and properly applying the 10th Amendment and the principles of true federalism. Chuck is also a syndicated radio talk show host and is heard nationwide. I mean, perhaps you've heard his radio show. Some of his past, Chuck was, I found this interesting just to give you an idea of his leadership skills again. In the 1996 presidential election, Chuck was headed the county, and I'm sorry, Chuck, I don't remember the name of the county in Florida, for Pat Buchanan in the primary against Bob Dole, and that was the only county in the state of Florida that won for Buchanan over Bob Dole. And I have to add this, that Chuck then was responsible for the party chairman losing his job in that county because the party machinery didn't go for that. They didn't like it that their chosen man lost in one county. So that's, I think, an example of Chuck's leadership in that county. And back in the early days of the moral majority, you remember back in those days, Chuck was the executive director, is that the term, Chuck, of the moral majority in Florida. In 2000, and this is all while he's pastoring the church. And in 2004, Chuck was picked to run as for vice president, nominated for vice president of the United States on the Constitution Party ticket. And in 2008, Chuck was the candidate for President of the United States on the Constitution Party. So, folks, I sincerely appreciate this man coming to Montana, and many of you have heard him, and conveying the message of freedom as Chuck does. As a pastor who, as I've said before, will not tickle your ears from the pulpit, and who, as a candidate for political office, will not tickle your ears for a vote. And I like that. So please welcome my good friend, Pastor Chuck Baldwin from Pensacola, Florida.
Thank you very much. Wow. Let's Let's give it up again for Mona and for Rick. These are two of the great statesmen women in America. I am delighted to be here in Missoula, Montana. I am prouder to be with you wherever you are, because I believe that you are the hope for America. When I spoke down in Hamilton a few months ago at Mona's invitation, I said this to the crowd in Hamilton. I would like to repeat it for you folks here in Missoula. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that what's going on in Missoula, Montana is more important than what is going on in Washington, D.C. For too long, the American people have had their focus out of focus. Because of the national news media and others, we constantly focus our attention on Washington, the Congress, the Senate, the White House. Everyone is consumed with what is going on in Washington, D.C. They are happy or sad, dependent upon what Washington, D.C. does or does not do. They are glad or miserable, depending upon who is elected or not elected in Washington, D.C. It seems that everything that determines their lives for good or for ill, as far as they are concerned, emanates from that cesspool by the Potomac. As a result, millions and millions of the American people have become disillusioned and have been overwhelmed with a feeling of helplessness. Because the more they focus their attention on Washington and try to improve things in Washington, D.C. And believe me, what I'm about to say does not mean that we should not pay attention to who's running for Congress. I'm not advocating that we ignore who's running for the U.S. Senate or the White House. I'm not saying that. We should vote for the best people we can in those offices. We very much should pay attention to those races. However, because of the focus on Washington, most Americans have the idea that there is no hope outside of Washington, D.C. They have this idea that Washington is so big, so powerful, there's nothing that we can do. We elect the Democrat and they disappoint us. And so we get mad and we throw the bums out and we elect Republicans and they disappoint us. And then we get mad and then we go ahead and back to the Democrats. And we've been doing this for many decades. Throwing one bum out and putting another bum in.